Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. I am your host, astrologer Shannon Cunningham, and today we are going to be talking about the relatively explosive but also quite willful opposition between Mars in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius, which is going to be really dominating the whole second half of April here, but it will be peaking and it will go exact on the 26th of April of 2025, and then it will wind up carrying through the rest of the month tiny bit into May. So this is something that we are going to want to really be quite aware is going on. And I do need to preface this video by saying that I'm going to give a lot of warnings here. This isn't going to be the most like flowery, beautiful kind of a video, but the purpose here is to just have, knowledge as power to understand the fact that this is going on and then to be able to sidestep some of the pitfalls that come along with this, and then also to tap into some of the pretty unique potential that we are able to tap into with this kind of a dynamic that we're going to be experiencing throughout this period of time. So let us go ahead and dive into it. First off, one of the things that we're really going to want to do here is look back to early January and see what was going on for us in the areas of our lives that I will be getting into when I take this through sign by sign, based, of course, on your rising sign, in case I forget to mention it later. If you read for your rising sign, it will align with the whole sign houses in your actual birth chart. So that's why I always recommend to read for your rising sign. But it'll be important to check back on January, see what resonates of what I'm going to point out later in this video, see what resonates to that period of time. You're likely to be dealing with either very similar themes or the resolution of something that arose around that question during early January. We did also have an opposition between Mars in Cancer and Pluto in Capricorn, which was the first of these oppositions before Mars wound up going retrograde and then met up with Pluto again along the Leo Aquarius axis. And that one took place about a day or two before the US election. So I want to say it was on November 3rd of 2024. So it can also be useful to look back to that time because we will also likely be resolving some of the issues that wound up arising around that time too. So just to point out some periods of time that we can look back on to see some of what we're going to be dealing with during this time. But basically, in astrology, an opposition is when the planets are 180 degrees apart from each other in the wheel of the sky. And what this brings up for us is a dynamic tension where we feel like there's something inside of us and then something outside of us, which are pushing and pulling and kind of conflicting and forcing our hand to address a specific type of an issue. And so with Mars symbolizing action, drive, ego, and then Pluto representing power, transformation, the subconscious, that's a lot of what we're going to be experiencing this push and pull as an energy. And their opposition can then spark really powerful oppositions, inner conflict, very deep personal growth, as well as, like I've been alluding to, and I'm going to be hammering on repeatedly, also a lot of personal willpower that we can pull out of this. And I think that that's going to be one of the better ways that we can experience and express this transit. So then with Mars in Leo during this period of time, the urge for self-expression and recognition is going to be intensifying. We may find that that is a lot of the motivation or the purpose, so to say, of our action during this time, of our drive. And meanwhile, with Pluto in Aquarius, that is then indicating a power that is outside of us, that's bound up in the collective, or it's bound up in society. It's part of a system. It's part of a network in Aquarius. And so we're likely to feel then a lot of tension between our own personal pride and collective transformation, or say our own personal urges and goals, and going after what it is that we personally want, and then social rules or social powers, the powers that be, so to say, we can feel like there's that's somehow getting in the way. And we can really want to push up against that then. And all of this is also going to be, as I alluded to in the April, or I spoke directly to it, I did not allude to it, in the April forecast, throughout the opposition between Mars and Pluto in early Leo and Aquarius, we'll also then have the sun moving through early Taurus, as well as the moon, including then the new moon that we're going to have at the end of the month as well. And those will be squaring both Mars and Pluto. And so, in addition to the major power dynamic that is going to be characterizing the whole second half of the month here, there's also a lot of potentially chaotic or manipulative behaviors that have been going on around us that we're now able to see, that are being revealed to us. We could even see this out in the world where something like that is then being revealed to us. And so some of the key themes that we will be experiencing with this Mars-Pluto opposition collectively is going to be power struggles. So personal ambition clashing with those societal forces. The Sun square is then adding volatility to the mix. And so, one thing that we should really do is to trust our own instincts. But I will also say from experience, be careful who you share those insights with. Trust your own eyes, but maybe don't share with everyone what they are seeing. And you'll have to judge the situation for yourself. But there will be people who are bound up in one side or another of that Mars-Pluto dynamic. And if you start coming in all sun-like and saying, let's shine a light on everything that's going on here, that sun is at a square to both Mars and Pluto. You could be getting backlash on multiple fronts if you do something like that. So it is something that I would definitely recommend being a little cautious around if you don't want to stir up some unnecessary trouble for yourself. Also, this is going to be driving up a lot of emotional intensity in us. So, suppressed emotions are very likely to surface. In fact, emotions themselves, the more conflictual, the more challenging, the more intense that those emotions are, they're going to be right below the surface and kind of threatening to come up quite a bit. And so, that is another energetic dynamic that we'll be experiencing internally that we'll want to keep in mind. So I would definitely utilize this as a chance to comfort yourself and to process then those psychological dynamics, to really confront those, but also to try to take care of yourself during this time. It's going to be tense energy. It's going to be a lot of just tension in the air. We may hear more police kind of related stories, things like that, even in our own cities of people acting a little bit crazy. But if very strong emotions do come up for us during this time, I would really recommend not sweeping them under the rug, because then that is just basically what you're doing is we're dealing with Mars, which is highly potentially explosive and action related. It's our urge. It is that drive that can kind of come up unexpectedly, even when it's not in one of the most tense dynamics that it can be in, like it will be. And then Pluto, which itself is very volcanic, very eruptive, and it can pull things up that we did not even know were there because they were so deep, that they were so deeply suppressed, basically. So if those things do wind up bubbling up, for one thing, if you have to go to an office, I would definitely recommend utilizing bathroom breaks and little excuses to step away if you need to, because there's such a high probability that people, including us, will react and won't mean to and may regret it. So just something to keep in mind. Not, again, to sweep anything under the rug. It has to be confronted. It does need to be resolved with this kind of a dynamic, but not always all at once in mixed company, so to say. So something to keep in mind there. If you feel something welling up within you, try before it comes out to get yourself into a safe kind of environment if you don't feel like you are. Also, there's a huge transformative potential with this alignment here. And so, challenges, even during this transit, can really lead to profound inner growth and a stronger sense of purpose, feeling more aligned on the other side of this based on something that we're kind of forced to confront. And when I say that, I don't mean a whole upheaval, everything is crazy, This can be something that you have had even less than in the back of your mind. It may have just been a kind of sentiment that was going around that you were kind of sometimes picking up on that again, anything that you've tried to sweep under the rug, not deal with quite yet. You may have that come up as really, really, really strong urge and need to address it. Could be as simple as feeling very stir crazy and needing to take a trip and having that urge. And I would plan long term here. I'm going to go into that in a moment as well. But to actually then book that trip, this may be just the drive, the urge, the push that you need to bite the bullet on that and do it. As far as how to navigate this transit goes, definitely avoid power plays straight up. Not every conflict needs to be 100% avoided under this. You know the situation that you're in. If someone's already volatile, trying to turn down the temperature, I personally don't feel like is ever a problem. I try my best to stay emotionally regulated, and I would definitely recommend that during this time, though I know that whenever I say things like that, people do kind of push back and say, well, you can't avoid all conflict. No, you definitely can't, but you can deal with conflict in a more or less reasonable manner and with more or less reasonable people. So just knowing what you're dealing with, I think, you know, you know. So definitely be mindful of control dynamics as well in relationships and groups. And if you're dealing with those, try not to let that slip your mind and, accidentally wind up then falling into something because people who are highly conflictual are going to be really spoiling for a fight under this influence. So something to really keep in mind. The likelihood of a conflict is much, much higher. Also, to then embrace transformation, resistance again only heightening the tension. So allow for the necessary changes to unfold here. Also, channeling passion productively. So the Mars energy that we have here, try to direct that into wise and long-term strategic leadership, as well as creativity or meaningful action. Keeping in mind that you may even fight with yourself a bit when it comes to your creativity. I would say if you're a writer, no editing, just stream of consciousness, just get it out there. You can edit it later. You're probably going to hate it right now if you try and edit it. Like we can even then put something out there and feel like, I don't like this, I need to redo it. And that's not necessarily genuinely the case. So I would just try to be as unjudgmental toward yourself as you possibly can and express it out, let it out. Try not to edit it or overly control that expression, but do try and channel it into something productive because it's going to have to come out some way. Also, exercise would be great. Going for walks, anything where you can get some physical energy out. Any other way that you can think of along those lines would also be advisable here, as long as you're thinking long term and you're smart about it. So, also staying discerning, I think, is also going to be quite important. We're going to be all up in our emotions and our urges. And so it will be a bit difficult to deal with things in a discerning manner. So while watching for manipulation, also try and keep in mind your own. And when it comes to even other people that are acting a bit strange during this time, maybe talk to them about it. That it might help them to express some of that by being able to talk to someone who knows that this transit's going on and that these emotions are just a lot stronger right now. And so that could offer them even a event or a release valve, so to say. But clarity is really going to be crucial. So also, then acting strategically. So, impulsive actions are very likely to backfire under this influence, too. So, thinking long term here, there's a lot of potential for backlash, and a lot of what is going to be receiving that is that impulsivity. So, uh, when it comes to shadow work, Pluto is also going to be bringing up a lot of hidden fears and desires. So, trying to heal that, again, not sweeping it under the rug, looking at it, addressing it, trying to resolve it quite proactively. Grounding yourself as well. So, utilizing again movement, even meditation, even rest to process intense feelings, as long as we're not again trying to sidestep things. I think that just trying to be either active or intentionally at rest is going to be very helpful to us and our the energy that we're allowing to basically flow through us, being cleared through us and not getting caught up and feeling like maybe there are knots than in our bodies. Also, preparing for endings and beginnings, there is a kind of death and rebirth moment coming up here for some of our aspects of life, especially around matters of identity, control that we have over ourself, our purpose, especially any aspects of ourself. Again, I'm going to say it, that we've been sweeping under the rug. That's likely to really experience a rebirth moment here and require addressing. So, um, some final thoughts on this. To move through this transit with awareness, definitely try to reflect on where it is that you assert control or where it is that you feel disempowered. Sometimes, myself included, I'm totally guilty of this. We can exercise too much control over our own lives, and we can sometimes try too hard to direct our energy where it might not naturally be flowing. And if that is something that you feel arising, or if you're trying to channel your energy and it comes up as frustration, like like there's something in you that is just resisting the action, if you can, I would really try and take a step back. Try to look at maybe why you don't feel like doing that. Maybe you don't at all want to do that. Maybe that's something that you can now understand. I really don't want to do this. Can someone else do this? Can I outsource this to like AI or something like that? Just to not have to deal with that kind of a thing. Also, communicating openly, but with awareness. I have to caveat this. So, uh, people are going to be extra sensitive. People are going to be extra, exposing their own potential high conflict personality dynamics and things like this. So definitely be aware of who you're dealing with. If they're a bit erratic, if they're a bit volatile naturally, this might not be the greatest time to start digging into things. But if you know that someone's reasonable, especially if you know that they're reasonable and they're feeling a certain way, I think that really trying to be open with people. Also, if you are feeling a certain way, you feel something building up, bubbling up, and you can't go do a bathroom break, crying in the bathroom at work kind of moment, then what I would definitely recommend is letting someone know that for some reason you're feeling like heightened emotions at this time and give me a few minutes. Let me settle down. Let me clear my head. If you can be open with someone, if they're reasonable, if they're not reasonable and that would get you into trouble, don't feel bad for making an excuse. Don't feel bad for sidestepping complicated people around this time because I think that's something we really need to give ourselves for permission about, basically, like permission before that moment, so that we don't have to have that conversation with ourselves in that moment about whether we're being completely honest about why it is that we're stepping aside. If someone is highly conflictual and you need to sidestep them, that's on them. They aren't reasonable enough to be able to engage with an open and honest manner. That's just how that is. Also, engaging in healthy outlets for this intense energy. So, again, creativity, movement, introspection, writing would be pretty cool if you can write without judgment. You may be using some more negative words than usual during this period of time, but I would say just allow it. It's got to process through and get out. Otherwise, it'll get kind of jammed up, and we're not really going to have transits to resolve this very soon. So better to try and resolve it now. Also, staying open then to growth. Let the tension lead you, guide you toward evolution rather than trying to resist that tension. It's got to come out some way. So there's better and worse ways for that to happen. And that's a lot of what I want to say about the collective kind of personal level that we're going to be dealing with this on. I'm going to take it through sign by sign in just a moment, but I do need to point out some things that I noticed in terms of mundane astrology when it comes to this opposition here, because I didn't mention this in the April. I've just looked at some charts the other day, and I want to mention some things that I saw coming up. One really, really big thing, I am going to use a lot of jargon real quick, and then I'm going to delineate. So there's going to be a lot of words here. If not everything is completely understandable, I will explain why this is so significant in a moment. This is hitting up Trump's chart in a very intense way, in a very multifaceted way. This is getting played into and played into and played into by technique after technique after technique. So, by transit, by progression, by zodiacal releasing, and by annual perfections. These are four different timing techniques that are all piling up during this period of time and pointing towards something very specific that I will be explaining in a moment. So, Mars is going to be at 3 degrees of Leo, right? Pluto is going to be at 3 degrees of Aquarius. Well, Trump's progressed Saturn right now is at 3 degrees of Leo. So Mars is right on top of it. And that is a very classical, conflictual, difficult kind of a transit to be experiencing at a given time. Additionally, then, his own natal Pluto is not far from this. It's right around 10 degrees of Pluto. He's coming into his Pluto opposition in the coming years as well. So his Pluto is there. His progressed midheaven is also right in the mix there, right around 7 degrees. His Pluto's right around 10 degrees. Also, his progressed ascendant is right around 1 degree of Scorpio right now, too. And that's also then pointing to Mars. So we have a lot of repeating, hey, Saturn, hey, Pluto, hey, Mars kind of stuff going on for him that's all very angular because that Leo is his first house. His progressed midheaven is now there. So he's got a double up of angles, which amps up the energy. In addition to this, in terms of annual perfections, which is a Hellenistic technique, he's in a seventh house perfection year, which is to say his seventh house is Aquarius. Pluto is there, it's transiting there, but that's also pointing to Saturn being something that we should never overlook. And it's his progressed Saturn that's getting exactly conjoined during the exact Mars-Pluto opposition. Then, in addition to this, and this is going to be kind of the biggest thing, is that we then layer on the fact that he is going through one of the biggest shifts in terms of his zodiacal releasing. This is another Hellenistic technique, but it points to long periods of time in our life which are characterized by certain types of energies. He's coming into what we call a peak period, which is highly active and highly substantive, highly significant period in his life that is starting this April. It's going to go on for several years. I always forget what the Leo period of time is. I think it's going to probably be like 15 years or something like that. Definitely feel free to correct me in the comments. I could so easily be wrong on that. But so this is going to be years that he's in this period of time. And it is a peak, so it's extra important. And it's a first house zodiacal releasing period. That means that that is Leo, which also contains his Mars and his Pluto. So he naturally has Mars in Leo. While we're getting this Mars and Leo opposite to Pluto in Aquarius opposition, hitting up his own chart. He has his Mars there. He also has his Pluto there. So, for one thing, this whole zodiacal releasing period for him is going to be super conflictual and really all about power dynamics, possible abuses of power, and difficulties that come from the exercise of aggression and power, which is kind of difficult for a US president, especially Trump. Now, this is then exactly mirroring that Mars-Pluto opposition itself, because it's Mars and Pluto that are pointed to, even by his zodiacal releasing, as don't ever overlook these transits and these planets when they're doing important things, because it's going to be extra important. So we have annual perfections pointing to Saturn being something don't overlook. We have zodiacal releasing pointing to Mars and also Pluto. It's not exactly Hellenistic technique if I throw in Pluto, but still, to not overlook these things, as well as to not overlook transits to the first house. That seventh house perfection you're saying, don't overlook transits to the seventh house. This is all of exactly where everything is taking place. So we have pretty much all of the techniques pointing to this being highly significant for Trump, which is to say, I was saying in the April forecast that the way I was seeing this with relation to Trump was that when we had that first Mars opposition to Pluto when they were in Cancer and Capricorn, a couple days before the election, that is, of course, the influence under which he was elected. Then we had the next one in the beginning of January when Congress came in. And now we are dealing with the third and final, the resolving opposition here, basically, that's feeding into all of these other techniques for him. So there's something about his legacy and the way that he carries himself, the way that he exercises power and authority, which is likely to go awry under this kind of an influence. And it's also likely to go quite extreme under this influence. Because of the fact that what we're dealing with here is Mars, Saturn, Pluto, we cannot get away from, we can't sugarcoat this. It's not going to be something lovely, straight up. We can't ignore that. The last time that we had these three all conjoined was COVID. If you basically need an explainer on, yeah, no, it's not good. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a challenge for him and from him, and it's not likely to go the greatest. There could be some kind of power dynamics behind the scenes, like a power play against him going on. Under this influence, there could also be a health concern or something like this that's coming up because this is taking place in his first house there as well. So it looks really intense. I am definitely expecting it to be quite obvious when this comes through, though. Also, then this Mars part of this is right near JD Vance's sun, too, because his sun is right on Trump's Pluto at 10 degrees of Leo. As well, I do want to point out quickly, just to put a little pin in it, also for me to hopefully remember to keep this in mind, is that in July, JD Vance's progressed ascendant and midheaven will both be changing. That's pretty rare for both of those to change at the same time. So his role, the way that he's coming across, is about to change. I don't know why, but this opposition is also hitting him up. So I expect major moves to be going on with them. Additionally, this is taking place on the nodal axis of the United States. So Mars is on our north node and Pluto is on our south node. And so, because of the fact then that this is also on the third house, ninth house axis for the United States, I would assume that there's going to be consequences for aggression, and particularly with foreign nations for the US here. Quickly, some other nations that are getting hit up here. I'll probably explain quite a bit of this, but Pluto's on the moon and the ascendant of China. So there's likely to be something about the population there that's transforming, as well as the face of China that is transforming during this period of time. China will be being seen differently, and the population will be being seen differently, as well as they are also seeing themselves differently and transforming during this period of time. Pluto will also be on the Saturn of Russia and Ukraine because they both have Saturn in this very early Aquarius period of time, as they both kind of coalesced, so to say, in 91 when we had Saturn there. So there could be a dynamic of control that is playing out between them, which is quite significant and is impacting the face then of Ukraine, because that's also the ascendant of Ukraine is right there. Mars will be on the Mercury of Canada, so we're likely then to see negotiations probably, I'm just assuming, probably around some of the tariff stuff that will be taking place. Mercury has to do with communication, but also commerce. So we could see something like that, a lot of messaging, a lot of communication, possibly with foreign countries, possibly just a huge, huge, huge amount of discourse, which may be kind of explosive within the country as well. So something to keep in mind there. Mars will also be on the moon of Israel, and this is pointing to a broader period of almost 2 decades now, where that whole nation is going to be transforming in a pretty extreme, extreme, extreme way, where Pluto then, because Mars is on the moon of Israel, Pluto's opposite to that moon of Israel. Then it's going to be opposite to the Mars of Israel, then the Saturn, then the Pluto, because those are all jammed up in Leo for Israel. And so it's going to be a pretty intense period of transformation and a lot of probably kind of ugly power dynamics that are going to be going on there, where the country will, believe it or not, be kind of unrecognizable probably by the end of this couple of decades here. Pluto will also then be on the Uranus of the Federal Reserve and also in the eighth house of the Federal Reserve. So this is likely to represent some major change when it comes to probably duties or the perceived function of the Federal Reserve, something that is highly transformative to it coming up as an institution. Also, I do want to point out that in terms of astrocartography, the Mars opposition to Pluto will sometimes be rising and setting, since they're opposite to each other, at the moment of their opposition in a given place. Sometimes they will be culminating and anti-culminating at the midheaven and at the Imam Cooley in a given place at the time of that exact opposition. So here are the places that I would say, if you hear something here that's relevant to you, probably worth being cautious around crowds. Likely to be a lot of action around this. Could be some kind of a transformative dynamic tension that's coming up that is a forcing the issue kind of an energy, basically. And so very significant events coming out of this. US, Canada, Mexico. That is not East Coast. I think it's actually west of me. So I want to say it's like Colorado and then down and up. Also then Russia, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Western Africa and Western Europe are all getting this on angles when it goes exact. So it's likely to be especially pronounced and especially amplified in those areas too. So as we then, coming back to a personal level and shifting into the sign by sign, as we navigate this very potent opposition between Mars and Pluto, try to remember that the energies may be intense, but they also then offer opportunities for major profound growth and even empowerment. And so this opposition is going to represent for us a breaking point in whatever house axis that we are experiencing it in our own natal charts. And what we're likely to see across that axis, and this will come through in the sign by sign as well, is power struggles, whether in relationships or career or personal development. You may feel a tension between control and independence throughout this period of time. You may also feel like your action is coming up against social pushback, or that you're somehow trying to act against the grain. We'll also then have some major transformative catalysts. Again, having your hand forced with something you've been trying to sweep under the rug, something you've been trying to avoid, having your hand forced to basically have a situation that arises in order to push you toward a deep, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes just on the face of it, absolutely wonderful change where you're like, why didn't I do this before? I should have just given in to this, you know? Also, major ego versus evolution themes coming up here, especially given we're dealing with Mars and Leo, plus that Pluto in Aquarius there. The need to assert oneself could wind up clashing with a demand for a deeper, longer term transformation or a larger concern, a social concern. You may feel like you want to do something, and not just that, but you can't, but also sometimes, but that you shouldn't, kind of a thing, may also wind up presenting itself through this. And possibly foremost, breakdowns that lead to breakthroughs along the lines of the house axes that we are experiencing this in. So this transit has the potential for a major shakeup of foundations in these areas of our lives, but it's doing so in order to clear the way for something stronger to be able to be rooted there, basically. So with all of that said, I want to run through this sign by sign. But before I do, since I know that we tend to use the timestamps to jump ahead and then we go our own ways, I do want to thank you so much for being here. And if you enjoyed this video, do please give it a thumbs up. That helps the channel out immensely. It helps to spread the video around by feeding the algorithm, and I'm very grateful for that. Also, if you enjoy content like this, where we look at the transits through the lens of mundane astrology or world astrology, as well as personal astrology, then do consider sticking around by subscribing. I would love to have you here. And foremost, thank you so much to our members on this channel, Angel Niblock, Patrick McKenney, Startlingly True, Deborah Keel Leavitt, or Kyle Levitt, definitely let me know, Gary A., Stacy Bergener, Maria Cyril Hyro, Michelle Howell, JJ, Jody Z, C. Rezer, Anne Marie, Lynn Newman, Rachel Windholtz, Peace Out, Lisa S., Aya, the Z-Man 1291, Long T Standing, and the Nelson Cat Maya. Thank you so much for your support. Much love to you. And there is information in the description box if you are interested in membership perks and things like that. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the sign by sign. Okay, so for Aries rising, we have Mars in your fifth house versus Pluto in your 11th house. And we're going to go through all these points that I have here one by one together. So this can bring up matters of creative expression versus group expectations. So you may wind up feeling then torn between like personal creative projects and then the expectations or the demands of social groups or communities or colleagues. You may feel like you really want to get a personal project off the ground, but that you have some sort of obligation within your working life or your community that you wind up needing to address. And so there may be something coming up here around, do you tend to back burner your creative projects quite a bit? And is there something that you can do to transform that situation a bit so that you're able to come back to your own personal interests and your own personal spark a bit more? Also, potential romantic power struggles. So, intensity in romantic relationships is very likely to arise under this influence and possibly then even bring up questions of jealousy or envy or control issues to the surface to be dealt with. And it would be wise to address that quite head on if that's coming up. Again, that's something I definitely wouldn't try to sweep under the rug. Also, children and authority conflicts. And this could come through in a couple different ways. So your children could have power struggles with you over authority and independence, their own versus your own. But you could also need to like defend your children within some sort of authority structure or something like this. So, of course, for instance, there could be an issue with a teacher at school that you wind up needing to address. So, if that is something that has been hinted at in recent months, I wouldn't be surprised if that then comes up to need to be resolved around this period of time as well. And yeah, your children may just be kind of pushing your buttons a bit. Again, I would try not to explode at them, but addressing it directly, I think would probably be the best way to go about it during this time. Also, leadership challenges in group dynamics could arise. So, especially if you are leading a team or a social cause, or if you are a leader in work or something like this, you could find some resistance from your peers that are challenging your authority. Also, hopefully, if you are independent, hopefully this wouldn't be a competitor that is doing something that's kind of challenging to you, but again, that's something that wouldn't terribly surprise me as well. And so we could then also see friendship shifts during this time where some friendships are being kind of tested and revealing underlying hidden tensions or manipulations that wind up needing to be addressed. If that's the case, I wouldn't go looking for that. You'll see it. You'll definitely see it if that's a thing with that square from the sun as well. Also, there could be a sense of gambling with risks. You may really feel an urge to take on financial or personal risks, but do again try and be aware of the power dynamics that could wind up complicating things. So again, I'll just give you an example. Say you're wanting to invest straight up in the stock market. Do try to be aware of the power dynamics that go along with whales and pump and dumps and things like that. The stock market's not always quite as straightforward to regular people as it is to people in the know. So just kind of something to keep in mind. And that can go into personal risks as well when it comes to the people that maybe you're conflicting with someone and you're taking kind of a personal risk to do so. Just definitely be aware of authority that could arise within that situation. Also, ego versus collective needs are really highlighted for you. So, again, a major emphasis on balancing self-expression with collective interests, very crucial in order to avoid alienation from, say, important social circles that you belong to or from colleagues or whatnot. You could feel quite willful in your work. And I wouldn't say don't do that, but again, just try to be as empathic as you can in that kind of a situation to where you can pick up on it if you're rubbing someone the wrong way, especially within a working kind of environment. Rebirth of long-term goals. So you may have dreams and ambitions that are transforming around this time where it's forcing your hand to reassess what's truly important and truly meaningful for you during this time. And that's kind of a nice way that this could come out. Fifth house, 11th house transits tend to go over pretty okay. And so you may really feel an urge to go after a big dream or aspiration of yours. Or you may have, again, like the rebirth or tapping into a new goal for yourself. And you may feel very energetic and very confident and, again, willful about going after that. Totally, I would totally lean into that. I would totally take that on. Also, you could have some romantic connections or attractions then to people in power. You may feel yourself surprisingly drawn to people with authority or influence. But again, keep in mind what power dynamics you're dealing with then in that kind of a situation and be mindful of any potential manipulation. And by this doesn't even just have to be a romantic attraction, it could just be an attraction or a gravitation, generally speaking. But same warnings in that kind of a dynamic as well. Also very likely to be a very powerful catalyst for creativity. So if you are able to utilize this constructively, then this could really lead to a kind of explosion then of creative energy and muse like inspiration type of energy that could feel like it's feeding into a sense of self-actualization with the 11th house involved here as well. So it should be pretty interesting and cool, but yeah, I would definitely just look back to January, see if things like this were arising. If so, they're likely to come up again. And other than that, just, try and be cool in group dynamics. And yeah, other than that, I hope that it treats you as well as it possibly can. And thank you so much for being here, Aries rising. So for Taurus rising, Mars is going to be in your fourth house and Pluto is going to be in your 10th house. So this is bringing up home versus career potential conflicts. And so there's likely to be a tension between your professional ambitions and your family responsibilities. These may even reach a breaking point where, again, it really needs to be resolved and addressed. So work-life balance could really be coming up as something you have a huge urge to solve during this period of time. You could also then run into some authority issues in your working environment. And you could find yourself at odds with bosses or authority figures or industry leaders. I would, if it were me, I would try to avoid that just because since there is an opposition there, you're likely to get pushback. And if you don't have the upper hand in that kind of a situation, this is exactly the kind of a transit where you could wind up on the losing end of that. Even if it's a lose-lose, it's still a losing end, on your part. Also, potential control struggles then also in family. And so family dynamics may involve power plays or power dynamics of some sort, especially with parental figures or people that you live with. And so I would, again, try to address that straightforwardly in a home situation. Obviously, there's still power dynamics to keep in mind, but it can be a little bit less straightforward than in a working situation. So I think that that should be something that's addressed then, if that winds up coming up during this period of time. You could also experience around this time major career transformation. So this may really push you feeling an urge, feeling a welling up to need to reassess your career trajectory. And this could then in turn lead to some pretty profound shifts along those lines. And again, that's something that I would recommend looking at right in its face because it could be a really positive then outcome of this transit for you. Emotional volatility in the home, heated arguments, confrontations may wind up arising, even if there's not weird power dynamics. People are just going to be more on edge, so something to keep in mind. Also, a need for independence, a desire then for autonomy here, both in your personal and professional life, could wind up coming up. If you really feel the need to take some time off, maybe do a bit of a staycation. If you are really feeling it, if you're in the thick of it, try and keep in mind maybe it would work to even just rent a room locally for a day and take a sick day or take a personal day or something like that, and just try not to deal with anything if you feel like it's deeply uncomfortable for you. But there could then also be the exposure of hidden family secrets during this time. Pluto does tend to expose things. There's also the square to the sun, so things coming to light. So long buried family issues may wind up surfacing then, requiring a deep sort of emotional processing during this time too. Again, I think that that would be something of a gift, but these things aren't always fully comfortable in the moment, of course. There could also then be changes in your living situation. So you may wind up moving or renovating or experiencing a sudden kind of disruption within your home environment. Hopefully not weather related, although probably there's still going to be more weird weather stuff coming up around this time. But that could be another thing that's really transforming through this kind of pressure and could could be potentially actually quite good. One thing to keep in mind here is that we do have reputation at stake when we're dealing with the 10th house. And so definitely be cautious of how personal matters can spill into your public image. Keeping, I think, a lid on that would be pretty wise. And one of the best ways to do that is to deal with things as they are and not try to put a lid on those in your personal life to where it would potentially then spill over. Just try and deal with it as it comes and keep it personal. Also, then finding power in inner stability. So the lesson here is really to develop a sort of emotional resilience to external pressures here, to come back to who you are deep down in your core and the core from which you act out into the world during this time, and to try your best to really get in touch with that, I think is going to be one of the best ways to smooth over any of the potential fallout and lean into a lot of the potentially decent urges for transformation that you'll be experiencing throughout this transit. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Taurus rising. I hope that it treats you very well. And thank you so much for being here. So for Gemini rising, Mars is going to be in your third house, while Pluto is in your ninth house. And this is going to be playing out both in terms of where you are and where you would like to be, and then also along the lines of intellectual matters. So there could be some powerful debates and intellectual battles that you find yourself in. Heated discussions, ideological clashes may emerge. So just something to be cautious of if these kinds of topics wind up coming up. If it's a relationship where if that were to go awry, that wouldn't be the greatest. I would maybe just try not to have that topic come up at all, or try to step back from it when it does. Also, legal or academic conflicts could come up or challenges. So, if you're involved in any sort of legal or educational matters, you might face opposition from some powerful figures during this period of time. Things like that could definitely come up. Also, tensions in sibling relationships could come up here. The third house has to do with siblings. So, those kinds of dynamics may become much more intense during this time. Look back to January, see if that was the case then. Potentially, then revealing longstanding issues between you and a sibling during this time. You could also experience some transformations in your belief system. So deep psychological shifts could wind up occurring that wind up leading to a change in worldview, where you may then even wind up carrying yourself a bit differently or interpreting even the world around you, like closer to you, the people, places, and things around you. You may then wind up behaving differently going forward with those matters, basically. There's also a risk here of speaking too boldly. So something to be very mindful of is aggressive communication here that could wind up backfiring. It's very, very, very likely that it would. So try your best not to speak aggressively during this time. Also, sudden travel opportunities or challenges could arise. So if you have a trip booked, I would keep that in mind. If you could plan for a disruption, I would try and plan for a disruption, but I wouldn't be crazy like scared about it, but you could even have a travel opportunity wind up falling in your lap around this time. So the travel plans, though, may be very intense or transformative or involve unexpected obstacles. So just something to wind up keeping in mind here. You may, for instance, have a trip that is in very quick, like you have to get ready for it quite quickly, or you could have a trip that sneaks up on you. Like you've known for a while that it was coming, and then it was like, oh, wait, that's not a couple weeks away. That's like 5 days away at this point. I kind of got it stuck in my head that it was a while off, and now I need to like quickly get everything in order. There could also then be some mental overload that you wind up experiencing this time during this time. An overactive mind could wind up then leading to stress or anxiety. So conscious relaxation techniques would be very wise in that kind of a situation, or exercise. I know that one of the things that's recommended for instance, public speaking, because our minds tend to go a little bit crazy before we have to do that, to do some exercise beforehand, because what happens is you get a lot of energy that's built up in you and you hold it in, you hold it tense and tight because you're trying to work on self-control. But the best way to actually address that is to like pace or just get that energy out somehow. So those could be some decent techniques as well. Also, potential interest in esoteric or occult knowledge could be coming up, like spiritual knowledge around this period of time. Probably leaning a little bit more occult with Mars and Pluto here, but you could feel a very strong pull toward hidden or secret information, and you may have a very intense drive to research and dig into that, and learn more about that, expose that basically to yourself. Also, speaking of public speaking, potential public speaking or writing challenges. So, if you're in a communication heavy profession or there's something coming up, there may be some hurdles or conflicts to overcome in that. That could totally be internal if this is a public speaking thing. And I would definitely recommend pacing a lot in the whole lead up to a public speaking thing. It'll keep your diaphragm from getting really tense and vibrating, and that's how our voice winds up then being shaky, which makes us then more anxious and so on. So also probably some very powerful learning opportunities that you could be encountering around this time. So if you embrace change, then this can be a period of some seriously profound intellectual growth that will have a very strong and long-term impact for a while. So yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Gemini rising. I hope that this transit treats you quite well. And other than that, yeah, thank you so much for being here. Okay, so for Cancer rising, Mars is going to be in your second house while Pluto is in your eighth house. So for sure, we could see some financial power struggles taking place here. Conflicts over money, debt, shared resources could certainly arise. That would be pretty straightforwardly literal of how these would be expected to play out. But we could also see possessiveness show up in relationships. So, control issues regarding intimacy and trust may wind up becoming more apparent. They will be very difficult to sweep under the rug during this period of time, especially given the square to the sun, really bringing those things to light. Also, when it comes to your own personal values, you could be experiencing a transformation along those lines, which could be quite welcome. You may wind up rethinking your priorities and what truly matters to you during this time, and that could certainly be quite fruitful. Also, financial settlements, though, could come under scrutiny. So, I would be very careful to sign any sort of financial contracts around this time, any sort of financial deals or investments. I would also be quite cautious around that during this time, because hidden factors could wind up emerging later on out of signing something during this time. If you signed something in the past, you could also then have details of that coming up around this time too. And also when it comes to karmic debt, that resurfacing. So unresolved financial or emotional debts even may wind up demanding your attention and needing to be resolved. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a like a one for one or even a dealing with something with a specific person. It could just be a dynamic that you wind up encountering again in order to say, do it differently this time or something along those lines. Also, I do have to warn that during this time, your survival instincts are going to be very, very heightened. So you may, on the one hand, feel the need to assert financial independence and security. And that is all well and good, but this could also then bring up questions of like fight or flight responses and things like that. So if you've been feeling very insecure, or if that feeling winds up arising during this time, that is one thing you can look into that certainly and try to address what the root of that may be, but it's likely that you will be inclined to catastrophize. So I wouldn't stress quite as much as you were going to be naturally inclined to during this time. Also, really exploring psychological depths during this time too. So intense self-analysis may wind up then uncovering hidden fears or motivations, especially around questions of personal security, intimacy, trust, power dynamics in relationships, and things like this. So, also on the positive side here, you could definitely experience some sort of a positive potential for like a sudden windfall, or you could have a sudden loss here as well, but it can definitely go either way. And financial instability in and of itself could definitely be a theme. There could be a lot coming in and then also a lot going out. Things like that arising are quite likely. So trying to be prudent in your planning, I think, would be the best way to try to deal with this kind of energy in your second and eighth houses there. Also, potential major attraction to taboo topics and wanting to research those and dig into those more. So you may wind up finding yourself really fascinated with like deep, transformative subjects of life, death, rebirth, things like this. And you may want to spend time thinking about that or learning about that or discussing that with others. And you may even find some questions around your trust for others in your ability to discuss those things with them, and feel safe. Also, you may really feel an urge to reclaim some financial power during this time. So, reclaiming control over your material and emotional securities, major, major, major theme, and also a great opportunity during this period of time. So, yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Cancer rising. So, I hope that this treats you super well, and I will talk to you next time. So for Leo rising, this is taking place with Mars in your first house and Pluto in your seventh house. So this can definitely bring up personal power struggles in your relationships, a strong need to assert your identity, but partners could wind up then resisting in ways that are kind of effective. And so any issues along those lines are likely to become very apparent and really impossible to overlook and need to be addressed during this time. And you may also find that your charisma and magnetism is really enhanced around this time too, and that you have a lot of confidence. So your confidence level really soaring, but needing to be careful about coming across as too domineering or being needing to be mindful of potentially triggering people who may then have a strong negative reaction toward you. There could also then be some conflicts with authority figures outside of yourself, whether in personal or business relationships. Control issues may also wind up arising. Additionally, then transformations in relationship dynamics, I would definitely expect that. So long-term partnerships and relationships, business or personal, may undergo a really profound shift during this time and potentially even lead to endings, but also potentially just a rebirth, like needing to reassess and then grow into a new phase of a relationship during this time. You could also have a lot of increased like sexual tension during this time. So intimate relationships could wind up becoming a lot more intense, either positively or through pretty intense power struggles. And that could then feed into the more like sexual components of your relationships too. And there could then be a struggle between a desire to be independent versus a commitment that you've made. And you may wind up then feeling very torn between personal freedom and the expectations of a partner, or even the kind of partnership that you would like to have coming into conflict with a desire that you have also to be independent. So these things may kind of fly in each other's faces and contradict each other to an extent, and you'll just kind of need to find your footing and your balance through that during this couple weeks here. Also, really confronting shadow aspects of yourself. This is going to really bring up some deep-seated patterns in how you relate to others. So if you sometimes are a bit controlling with other people, or are quite willful and feel that, or others may feel that you are too assertive at times, this is something that you may want to look into and confront and reconsider, perhaps. Legal matters or contracts may also wind up coming into focus. So, if you're dealing with any sort of a legal dispute, negotiations may be a lot more intense. You may have a counter argument that is taking place around this period of time. And that could be strong. It may then wind up backfiring on the other party. Uh, Either way, there's strength on both sides here, but there's also potential for backlash on both sides. So something to keep in mind. Business partnerships could also really be tested. Joint ventures, collaborations, things like that could really be impacted by power imbalances or trust issues and need to be addressed or possibly then set aside as a relationship if it can't be resolved around this time. Also, a major catalyst here for personal growth if handled wisely. And so this opposition can really force you to refine your sense of authenticity in how you relate to others and your ability to show up for yourself in personal business relationships while not needing to over assert. That's the thing with Mars, is that sometimes we can be almost coming across like we're overcompensating, like we don't actually have confidence, and therefore we're acting in this very strong and overpowering way. And so this can help you to really transform that urge to show up in a certain way, and have you do that, sure, but have it come from a place of very authentic confidence then throughout this period of time, as you get a lot more in touch with that and basically have the issue forced upon you. You'll definitely be considering some of those dynamics of confidence with other people and things like that. So yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Leo rising. I hope that it treats you very well, and thank you so much for being here. So for Virgo rising, Mars is in your 12th house and Pluto is in your 6th house. So this can definitely bring up some power struggles that wind up arising behind the scenes, or any sort of people that are working behind the scenes or in secret with regard to you. You'll definitely find out about that during this time with that square to the sun. So you may find some revelations along those lines. Hopefully not, but that is a possibility. There could also then be some health or stress issues. Unacknowledged stress could definitely wind up manifesting as a physical ailment. So self-care is definitely very well advised during this time. And you could wind up running into some workplace power struggles as well. And there may be some then controlling colleagues, or like major changes going on in your working environment to where people are less than satisfied, and they may be making it quite clear that they're not super thrilled with that. So it may be like, even if colleagues and coworkers aren't conflicting with each other, they may just be bitching more, basically, is just the most straightforward way to put that. And so you may not love that the most. And so that is later on here, we have the need for solitude. You may then really feel the need to take some time to retreat and introspect and just kind of tap out from that for a little while here and there. Also, there is, though, the potential for some very serious, deep psychological healing during this time. So, uncovering and transforming subconscious fears is also something that is really highlighted here. Do you feel like what you do in your day-to-day life, your routine and your working life and things like this, do you feel that that is feeding you emotionally for one thing, but for another aligned with you? Do you feel like you're comfortable with that being your routine? If not, then this could definitely point to maybe a major transformation that needs to arise along those lines as well. So you could feel a very strong urge to realign your life and your routine with your spiritual beliefs, your sense of personal values, basically. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Virgo rising. I hope that this transit treats you super well. And thank you so much for being here. All right, so for Libra rising, Mars is going to be in your 11th house while Pluto is in your 5th house. So there could in this be some tensions in friendships. So power struggles or conflicts with friends could definitely wind up emerging. And this could come through as jealousy in your social circles. Someone in your social circles may even be trying to kind of underhandedly undermine your confidence or your standing within a given social group. And this could even wind up then playing out in social or professional groups. So you may feel at least the need to like fight for your place in a social setting. One thing that I will say around this is that with the sun at a square to Mars and Pluto, if there is a stupid power dynamic playing out for you or around you, it's it's very likely to come to light. So try, if you can remember, to not feel the need to respond in kind or yourself, because it's very likely that other people are or will be seeing what's going on. If there's something that feels kind of unfair or untoward that's going on around you. Now, also, then you could see a need to balance ego and teamwork. So, compromising then between personal desires and social expectations or collective needs coming up around this period of time. And you may even then, if you're able to balance that quite well, be called into a leadership position throughout this time too. So in your community or in your working space, you may really be seen as a leader through your ability to bring that kind of balance and compromise along these lines here. Also, when it comes to your children, there could be some pretty interesting power dynamics going on. For one thing, your children could be conflicting with you a bit, challenging your authority, things like that. But there could also be a sense that you have to need to defend your children. So, especially if there's something that you felt arising in January along those lines, say a teacher that's a bit of a problem or something like this, you may be needing to address that or feeling like you need to address that around this time. Also, if it was a teacher, I know a lot of kids are going to be wrapping up their schooling sessions around this time. So you may just be kind of relieved that you guys are no longer having to deal with a given personality anymore with the school year wrapping up. There could also then be some major dramatic romantic encounters too around this time. So, love affairs are likely to be very highly intense, and there could be some possessiveness or even jealousy that winds up arising. And this could even wind up then feeding into pretty dramatic endings or some pretty like charismatic and chemistry stirring beginnings of relationships around this period of time too. But yeah, finally, this could also wind up indicating a shift in your personal goals that is arising. And that's kind of my favorite thing about the fifth and 11th house axis is that your long-term aspirations then through this process could wind up undergoing a transformation in order to tap into what you really authentically feel and want and what feels right to express, what feels right to put out in the world of yourself, truly, and then to align your aspirations and your goals with that so that that is the goal to express yourself. That is the goal to be authentic. And how can you create more space for you to do that basically in your life? Can you pursue a specific direction where if that isn't already your career, so to say, that you could make that your career, you know? So this could be a really wonderful catalyst and a breakthrough kind of watershed moment in a process like that, where you're trying to bring that authenticity much more so into your life. So yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Libra rising. I hope that this transit treats you super well, and thank you so much for being here. So for Scorpio rising, Mars is in your 10th house while Pluto is in your fourth house. So we could see some definite career versus home life conflict. So a struggle between your professional ambitions and your personal life could become very apparent during this period of time for sure. And needing to balance out then your work life could become a major theme along these lines. Also, you could have some authority figures testing you during this time. So you may even wind up clashing with some superiors or feel a need to redefine your role in your career throughout this time. And so this can definitely serve as a catalyst along those lines to put you in a direction where you feel more in control of yourself and less at the mercy of potential clashes with superiors. And this can even drive up a desire for public recognition that could contribute to that kind of a catalyst too. So feeling the urge to assert yourself in your career, but potentially being met with resistance could really make clear to you, I don't really want to be dealing with these energies anymore because it's just going to wind up flaring up into something if I don't address this. But I do have to say that your reputation does play into this period of time too. So there could be a transformation of your reputation where this period brings a major shift in how the world perceives you. So, of course, we want to lean that toward the positive. And if that means that for the time being, you need to be cautious around a specific authority figure in order to give you more control over the changes that are coming out of this transit, then so be it. You may really want to accept that and try not to put the changes that are occurring here in someone else's hands, so to say. And so if handled well, then this transit could lead to a major career leap, but ultimately there are some career breakthroughs and overhauls that are implied by this transit here. Then on the home front, there could be some family secrets that wind up surfacing during this period of time with the square to the sun as well. And so hidden or unresolved family issues may wind up coming to light around this period of time. And this could even wind up playing into, or you may wind up experiencing some changes in your living arrangements too. So relocation or home restructuring may also wind up needing to play out around this time, or you may feel a really strong urge to relocate or to change something pretty significant around your home. There could even be some weird power dynamics that are going on when it comes to your living arrangements. And this could really urge you to then change it so that you're not dealing with those kinds of dynamics anymore. You could also wind up then experiencing some parental power dynamics coming into focus. So tensions with parents or other kind of parental figures could escalate quite quickly. So that is another thing to kind of be careful about. But ultimately, you are being confronted with a call to rebuild your foundation. So whether in career or family life, restructuring is definitely something that's a focus during this time and being pointed out as somehow necessary by the square of the sun to these very significant transits that are going on here. So, yeah, I hope that this transit treats you well, Scorpio rising, and thank you so much for being here. So for Sagittarius rising, Mars is in your ninth house while Pluto is in your third house. So this can definitely bring up some philosophical or ideological conflicts. You may experience some ideological clashes with others, particularly if you are in education or if religion or politics winds up coming up. There's a strong likelihood of that escalating. And so that is something to keep in mind if you find yourself in any of those kinds of conversations. For one thing, they could be pretty transformative in terms of your worldview. If you're taking on or considering someone else's perspective that you haven't before, but it is also much more likely to become quite heated. Also, there could be some legal or travel challenges that wind up arising. So, if you are planning a trip, there could be some difficulties, some obstacles that wind up arising in that. Also, if you are in any sort of legal matters, there could be some sort of an argument that is made there. Might not be completely expected, but there could also be a travel opportunity that suddenly arises or something along those lines that could be quite transformative for you to experience as well. So if it seems like there might be something like that on the horizon, but you're not quite sure, and it could be sprung on you, say like a business trip or something like this, then I would try your best to just prepare as much as you can and see if that winds up kind of being thrust upon you. Maybe you can be a little bit more prepared for that then. Also, some very powerful learning opportunities arising here. So, deep intellectual and powerful transformation is definitely possible with this kind of an alignment for you. And there may then also be some shifts in educational plans. You may even wind up abandoning some old beliefs or change some academic goals. You may discover a course that you feel a strong urge to take. And if you can, I would highly recommend doing something like that because it's likely, again, to be quite transformative. Even on the internal level, this can push you into some really deep internal reflection. So offering an opportunity for you to analyze your worldview and analyze your inner thoughts, your narratives about the world and your place in it, especially the people, places, things around you, how you fit into that, and then how you fit into the bigger picture as well. You could have some really transformative breakthroughs along those lines throughout this period of time, and that would definitely be pretty positive. On the other hand, there could be some uh, communication power struggles. So your words could definitely be challenged, like mine are right now. Your words could be challenged, requiring you to refine your messaging. And there could even be some hidden manipulations in close circles with the third house coming in here. So there could be a person around you or people around you who are trying to control those kinds of narratives and things like that. So that is something to keep in mind. Also, especially if you work in media or publishing, there could be some fluctuations along those lines. So major transformations could wind up impacting your work if you work in communications pretty much at all. And you may even be suddenly exposed to foreign culture. So traveling or interacting with different cultures could wind up being quite life-changing throughout this period of time. And ultimately, what this is serving is a push toward personal truth. So you may be forced to really redefine for yourself what truly resonates for you. And ultimately, it's pushing you to come to a better understanding. Again, yourself, the world around you, the broader society world, your philosophy about that, and what that says about your place in it. If you're able to try to direct that in a certain way that feels healthier and more empowering for you, I would definitely lean in that direction. I would definitely try to proactively go after something like that during this time. Also, if you can push yourself to read things from perspectives that you usually don't. I know it's annoying, but that could also be quite transformative and profound. I remember a couple of years ago, actually, I don't know if there were any transits going on or anything, but I wound up digging like really into, and if you know anything about me, you know this isn't really my jam, so to say, but I wound up digging pretty far into conservatism and like neoconservatism, paleoconservatism, and where that split wound up coming up and things like this. And of course, it's not for me, but it did really help me to understand, for one thing, those perspectives more, for sure. And also, then it helped me to understand the world better. It helped me to understand certain perspectives and narratives, which, when I was doing journalism, speaking of third and ninth house, uh, I was speaking to people that aligned with these matters, speaking to their actions and about all of that. And through digging more and more into that, I was even able to better understand all of the actions that I had been writing about and everything. So it can be pretty profound, even though it can be a little bit nauseating, you know. So I can only endorse that with my sympathies, so to say. But yeah, I hope that this transit treats you well. And thank you so much for being here, Sagittarius rising. Right. So for Capricorn rising, we have Mars in your eighth house and Pluto in your second house. So one of the kind of literal ways for this to play out would be financial power struggles. So shared resources, loans, inheritances can become a focal point. There can be a bit of conflict or challenge along those lines, as well as some intense emotional breakthroughs as well. So this is also where we encounter our emotions with other people, which is to say trust and intimacy, and then our own self-sufficiency and security and things like that can come up. So even deep psychological wounds may wind up surfacing for you along these lines and can at least present themselves for healing. I know that it's much easier said than done to heal certain things, even if they are blatantly clear for you. Ultimately, a lot of this, if fears wind up coming up, they're probably going to be around questions of losing control. That's how, you know, vulnerability, intimacy, trust, self-security, things like this always wind up coming up. And so issues around power, trust, vulnerability are quite likely to arise around this time. And if they arise within, say, a relationship, a significant relationship, trying to be sensitive about that and requesting that people be sensitive with you about that. I don't think that that could at all be considered unreasonable, you know, on your part. There could also be some like sexual transformations or intimate transformations that wind up being experienced here. So your intimacy itself could go through a profound shift. You may find that you are able to trust yourself more, and by being able to trust yourself more, you're able to be more open about what it is that you like and don't like, and what it is that you're comfortable with, what it is that you want out of a relationship. And this may be representing something that you may have even psychology and energy and spirituality can be tapped into and can be flowed into and can be fed into. Often you'll hear from them that they do feel a much stronger sense of security because they feel more supported. They feel like even if things do get a bit wonky for a moment, hey, there's always going to be a safety net for me. I'm always going to have plenty. And through then possibly leaning more in that direction for yourself, you may wind up getting really into that kind of alchemizing of, say, manifestation and transforming your energy into a greater sense of personal resources and security for yourself as well. So, yeah, I hope that this transit treats you super well. And thank you so much for being here, Capricorn Rising. All right. So for Aquarius rising, you have Mars in your seventh house and Pluto in your first house. So this can definitely bring up some power struggles in your relationships. Partnerships really being tested for their strength and authenticity during this time. Pluto in your first house is bringing up identity shifts for you. So you're going to feel compelled to redefine yourself in the coming like 20 years or so. But during these few weeks, you're getting triggered on the outside along those lines. So you may be feeling a strong need for autonomy, the urge for independence, and that can then create some conflict in relationships where there may be people who are uncomfortable with some of the changes that are going on with you, and they may feel a desire to box you into what they know. You may really need to then explain to them as reasonably as you can under an influence like this. I'm going through some changes. I'm discovering a more authentic version of myself throughout this period of time. So if you could try not to place these expectations upon me and then fight me over them, basically, I would really appreciate that. That would really help me in this process that I'm going through. So yeah, I would just try to really be open in your communication about what it is that you're really wanting throughout this time. And don't be afraid to be authentic, because that's something that Pluto is really encouraging for you to do throughout this broader period of time. You may also be magnetizing to you powerful people, so drawing in intense or transformative individuals. I will caution about this. Just make sure that you're very aware of any sort of red flags. Mars in the seventh house can definitely bring in people. This is a kind of quintessential transit along those lines of connecting with people as Mars and Mars transiting your seventh. But the fact that it is opposing that Pluto in your first house, again, I would just really make sure that any sort of red flags or any sort of control issues, even aggression or things like that, that you see in other people, that you're not overlooking that. Even if they're not being aggressive with you, if you see a red flag with regard to how they engage with other people, that can really at least bring that to your attention so that you can be aware of it and see if you really want to go forward with something. Also, very intensified relationship energy, so much greater passion, but also greater conflict in your love life. So things are likely to escalate for good and for bad with love partners, basically. Even with like business partners and things like that, you could really be on the same page, get excited about something, and be really gung ho about doing something in partnership with someone, but you could also then be more likely to conflict and push back on each other as well. So there's definitely a double-edged sword there when it comes to your connections with other people. And one of the things that that's going to be bringing up is the matter of releasing toxic relationships. So any sort of unhealthy bonds that you have, this can really help you to break those bonds. So if there's something that you know that you need to deal with along those lines, this could be really empowering to help you to do that if for any reason you've been hesitating. And also, if you are unclear as to whether something is unhealthy, a dynamic within a relationship, the sun being at a square to both Mars and Pluto with this energy is likely to make that abundantly clear to you. So I would really trust your own eyes and don't be convinced not to believe your lying eyes by other people. Also, then, if you are in any sort of a legal kind of issue with someone, there could be movement along those lines throughout this period of time. There could be some sort of an argument on their side, but there can be pushback on either side. So it's not just necessarily going to go one way or the other. In fact, with Pluto in your first, I kind of feel like though would be more inclined to go in your direction. But I will say, when it comes to agreements or contracts, if you can wait, I would recommend doing so and try until, what is it, like after the first week of May or so, only then signing a contract or something like this, starting a partnership, something like this. when we are looking at transits, we're looking at how it's going to impact you at a certain time. But if you initiate something or if you start something, then what we do is we look at those transits and we conceive of that as the basically birth chart of that venture or that contract or something like that. And you don't necessarily want to have a Mars-Pluto opposition in a birth chart, so to say, an inception chart for a contract or for a partnership or something like that. So I would recommend putting that off. I'm not, a financial advisor or anything like that, but or a lawyer or anything like that. But personally, I would put that off until after the first week of May there, when these two get some separation. So yeah, also then you may feel really drawn to change your appearance or your health routine throughout this period of time. It is though getting triggered by a Mars in Leo in your seventh house. So I would be cautious around comparing yourself to other people. But if you are taking inspiration from someone else's like transformation journey or something like that, then that can be a really wonderful catalyst for a physical transformation of your own. But again, doing it for you and not doing it to fit into the expectations of someone else or society more broadly. If you were to do something like that, I don't think that Pluto and Aquarius in the first house would necessarily take that so well. So just make sure that you're not doing something to please someone else, basically, in terms of your own body. Also, really emphasized here and then for years to come, this is an empowerment journey. And this period where that's getting triggered from the outside can help you to reclaim personal strength. So you may even feel like you are recalling some of your own personal energy from other people where you may have felt like you have left some of your energy with them, or that you feel like there's cords or something like that. And then, of course, facing your shadow. So deep self-exploration could really lead to an immense amount of personal inner growth throughout this period of time. And again, this is likely to be triggered from that Mars from people on the outside. So you may even encounter an experience with someone where it's the kind of trigger where you like secretly in your heart wind up thanking them later for the inconvenience or the nonsense that they provided to your life at a given time because it catalyzed something that was ultimately personally very meaningful and transformative for you. So yeah, if someone winds up really ruffling your feathers around this time, it may be a major blessing in disguise. So try to look for silver linings along all of these lines. So yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Aquarius rising. I hope that this transit treats you very well, and thank you so much for being here. All right, so last but not least for Pisces rising, we have Mars in your sixth house and Pluto in your 12th house. So some of the things we're definitely going to be looking at here is some health and work stress being intensified. So you may feel overburdened by responsibilities, and you can be extra sensitive to burnout throughout this period of time. So I would really try to temper yourself, pace yourself even more than usual. Likely you're going to be, like I said, more sensitive during this time. And so the amount of responsibilities that you can handle during this time, I would say lower that of your expectation for the coming few weeks, just to make sure that you don't wind up in a situation of burnout where you're needing to do like corrective self-care to then try to address that. Now, there can also be some other stuff coming up in workplaces. So hidden power struggles in the workplace. There could be some unseen dynamics between coworkers, superiors, employees, and that is likely to surface around this time if that is the case. So if you've had any sense around that, yeah, you're likely to find out about it if that's going on around this time. So especially with the square between the sun and these placements, really shedding a lot of light on the power dynamics and power struggles within your working environment. There's also then potential for workplace conflict. So arguments with colleagues or feeling undervalued may lead to some sense of frustration in you. I would try to lower the temperature if you can on things like that, just because of the importance that our working life has for us and kind of restrictive rules that can be in place around that. But you may also then just be dealing with conflict within that working environment because of sudden changes in the working environment. So there could be a shift in job roles or a restructuring. There could even be people who wind up leaving suddenly that cause a shakeup. And it's very possible that people are not super happy about some of those changes. And so they may just be more irritable. And that's something then that you could be psychically or emotionally or even spiritually picking up on from the people around you. And so, for instance, if you are like a Pisces rising would tend to be playing counselor for those around you, just be careful again around burnout because that can help to contribute to that by doing a bunch of extra emotional labor for people. And also, then that is a responsibility. It's something you're doing, it's something that can be even more taxing than just regular work. And so, yeah, just try and set some limits with that and then try and set aside some time for yourself to really then make sure that you're replenishing with the 12th house also being a factor here. And so you may also feel a need to take some more control over your daily routine. This would definitely make a lot of sense. And this would be a pretty good proactive way to utilize this transit with Mars coming through your sixth. It's really going to fuel a desire to take charge of your schedule, your diets, your well-being habits, basically. And so if you're able to do that quite proactively, that would be really wonderful. But do also try to watch out for self-sabotage. So, for instance, the someone suddenly leaving a job could be you because you're frustrated, and then you wind up kind of sabotaging a situation because you're like, just screw it. I don't trust that I'm going to take the time to do the steps to get myself out of this situation. And I don't trust myself to be able to handle the emotions of the situation. And so I'm just going to like overturn the tables and just say, to heck with it, whole hog, basically. And on the other hand, like as a different example, you could wind up put yourself on a really strict diet and then find that you are going to the extreme in the other direction because you feel too boxed in, too restricted. And so trying to find a really good balance, I think, along all of these lines would be really helpful. Just try your best to make sure that you're not going to extremes, even if they look like they're good extremes, even if you're really motivated to, I'm going to do a total elimination diet on this, and this. Try to ease yourself in. Try not to do anything too extreme during this time because then you can wind up self-sabotaging by trying to find some comfort for yourself in that. You may even find some old health issues like chronic conditions or something that was in remission or something that was being treated effectively or something like that resurfacing. And that could come from stress. It could come from trying to do too much, things like that. And that could be coming to light or could be resurfacing around this time, basically urging you to address it with a new approach and possibly even then urging you to address it by lowering stress levels and things like that around this period of time. If there are any health things that feel like they are out of your control, this would be helpful for you to get a greater grasp on them. Now, additionally, with the 12th house here, with Pluto, Mars, and stuff like that, there could be some subconscious fears that are surfacing. So there could be some deep-seated like anxieties or patterns or conditionings that you're not fully aware of that play out in your day-to-day life that you're being tapped into, that are being revealed to you around this period of time with this alignment here. So if that is the case, then this can really push you towards some spiritual and psychological breakthroughs. If you engage in meditation or therapy, dream work, any sort of other spiritual or healing modalities to really get in touch with yourself, you could have some really profound insights into yourself around this period of time as well. And I would definitely recommend utilizing this transit to that end to tap more into who you truly are at your core. And so ultimately, what this is calling for is it's a call to surrender and to trust the process. So, encouraging really deep faith in your own inner transformation throughout this period of time, even if you can't see the full picture there. And I think that it's when we get a little bit freaked out about the fact that we can't necessarily see the whole picture, which is the case when we're dealing with the 12th house. It's in moments like that when we do risk self-sabotage because if we don't know fully what's going on, we can react in a way of, well, I will know what's going on if I just say to heck with the whole situation, then the answer is to heck with the whole situation. Whereas it may have actually turned out pretty good if the fear of not being fully aware of everything that's going on hadn't gained a level of control over you and your actions, but rather vice versa, that you've been able to look at that fear and look at that urge and to exercise some control over that, then that can also indicate a really profound insight into yourself and into your ability to channel your willpower and your energy in confidence with Mars and Leo in your sixth house there. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Pisces rising. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that this transit treats you super well. And thank you to everyone for being here. I hope that this treats everyone well and do be good. I'll talk to you later. Bye.